Welcome. My name is Reverend Angela Wells-Bean. I serve here at Naples United Church of Christ as our Minister for Congregational Care. And part of my portfolio is that I'm the clergy liaison to the Justice Committee. And this event this afternoon is the brainchild of the Justice Committee, and more specifically the chair, Jen Walker, who is a powerhouse not only in our church, but in the wider community. And so I am thankful that you are all here this afternoon to discuss what I would say is becoming a crisis, the lack of housing for folks in our community. And so I'm grateful you're here to be in conversation about this. I'm grateful for our two speakers, who I'm going to allow Jen to introduce. A few housekeeping things. You know how you got in through those doors right behind you. If you need the restroom, you can go through either of these exits in the right in the hallway behind me. I feel like a flight attendant. The exits are here. So welcome. We're glad you're here. Make yourself at home. Make yourself feel comfortable. And without further ado, I'll invite the chair of our Justice Committee, Jen Walker, to introduce our guest speakers.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Angela. That was terrific to have you here as our liaison. She's a great support. I'm particularly pleased that we're able to have this gathering, and I know some people will show up as we are talking, but they'll catch up with us. We are on Zoom now, I presume, and I just wanted to tell the people who are listening in remotely that if you have questions, put them in the chat. We're going to be manning that, and we'll give you a chance to have your questions asked. And the speakers have both promised that they will answer them. I want to actually do the introductions of our speakers in reverse order for a particular personal reason. So I'll start with Michael Pucella, who is the Executive Director of Housing Development Corporation of Southwest Florida. The acronym is HELP. And this is a HUD-approved nonprofit counseling agency. He joined in 2009, I think I got that right, and has been the executive director since 2013. So he really knows this community and the housing issues. HELP launched the Collier County Community Land Trust, Inc., and I hope you'll tell us a little about that. Our other speaker, who will actually start first, is Joe Trachtenberg, who is recently elected chair of the Collier County Affordable Housing Committee. Joe has served 11 years on the board of St. Matthew's House, 6 as chair. I think he got time limited finally. He is a founder of the Tamiami Angel Fund, the largest angel investor in Florida. He's got a longer bio than I'm going to give you. I'm very curious about that. Maybe he'll tell us about that. And the reason I wanted to introduce him second, even though he'll speak first, is he is a fellow GNLer, and that's very important to us. So, speakers.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for inviting me here. Beautiful day, and what a beautiful facility. I feel like I'm in New England. This is just a remarkable place. I'm grateful to be here with Michael, and between the two of us, we're going to talk about the crisis of affordable housing, affordable workforce housing in Collier County. And to be clear, these are the folks who make our daily lives possible. I'm speaking about our teachers, our nurses, child and healthcare workers, deputies, EMTs, firemen. And I think since COVID, we've come to recognize others that fit this definition. Restaurant workers or shopkeepers, the folks that put food in the bags at Publix. And speaking candidly, we need to stop taking these folks for granted. It's hard to read a restaurant review today that somewhere or other doesn't mention slow service. And this isn't accidental. We're now seeing more restaurants and retail establishments who are actually curtailing their hours because they can't hire sufficient staff to operate the hours they used to operate. It's interesting that we reflect back last year, the news was full of stories that businesses couldn't survive an increase in Florida's minimum wage of $8.50. I remember then how many businesses spoke out and said, there's no way, we can't tolerate an increase beyond $8.50 an hour. Today, we routinely pass signs on the road offering twice that with insufficient takers. So we need to think about why that is. And I think that the truth is, it's just not possible to live here on those salaries. The city of Naples, just as an example, employs 14 911 operators. Last week, 5 of those positions were unfilled. I do some retrospection and wonder if there's a day in the future when we dial 911 and someone might not answer the phone. So I'm addressing our concerns, the fact that our quality of life is going to change as we lose our service providers. Fewer and fewer of these people can afford to live in Collier County. And with the booming increase in property values, we see landlords who are raising rents by obscene amounts at every opportunity. This morning, I went on the rental website Zumper, which I had never heard of before, which tracks rental prices. It shows an average 2-bedroom apartment in Naples will cost $4,000. That same apartment in Fort Myers, which was perhaps equally or more shocking, will cost $2,300, which is 55% more than it cost last year. So the safe places that our people used to commute to are now no longer safe. Under our Florida state laws, it's illegal to control rents. Today, I urged our commissioners to follow Miami-Dade's recent action and adopt an ordinance that requires at least 60 days notice before increasing rent more than 5% or terminating a month-to-month lease. Honestly, for people not to have at least 60 days notice that the rent is going up $500 or $1,000 a month, or that you're out of your month-to-month facility, 60 days certainly isn't the answer, but at least it gives an opportunity for people to start scrambling and try to find another place to live or maybe another job. So you have to ask yourself, why would anyone voluntarily commute up to 3 hours a day if they could find a job near home? And the answer is simply they won't. You think of the time and money we've spent training men and women who then take their skills to a surrounding county. And think of the taxes that our commuting Collier workers are paying in Lee and Henry and Dade counties. Our affordable housing situation in Collier County is bad, and I believe it will soon get worse. But don't take my word for it. Let me share some comments that some others have made. The Collier County Chamber of Commerce has identified lack of affordable housing as the #1 public policy issue. Arthrex recently announced that they're having a hard time, and they told our commissioners, they're having a hard time recruiting employees and will likely expand elsewhere. That's a big deal. The HR director for Collier County Sheriff's Office made similar comments. He doesn't really have the same latitude. He can't build a jail in the Carolinas. Starting salary for a deputy is less than $3,000 a month net. So it's no surprise that 229 of our deputies leave the county every single day and drive to their homes in Lehigh Acres or Cape Coral or east towards Miami. I've met with officials in the school district. In a recent interview, one of their leaders described the lack of affordable housing as their number one problem. She said, we have 7,000 employees who can't afford to live here. That includes our teachers and even our principals. We recruit in 48 states. Our $47,250 starting salary doesn't sound too bad till you come to Naples and look for a place to live. NCH, which employs 4,500 people, uses traveling nurses now. They're paid over $1,000 a day plus expenses to fill some of the hundreds of nursing vacancies that they live with every day. 45% of our EMS employees live outside of Collier County. Remember the day when you used to have the joy of having a police car parked down the street because the deputy was one of your neighbors? Don't see that anymore. Two City of Naples police can afford to live in the city, and they've been there a while. And if you have any doubts, do what I did a couple times or 3 times these last 2 weeks. Try heading north on 75 or east on any road after 3 p.m. and see what these folks deal with. So on the other hand, it's likely most everyone here today is thrilled with the increase in individual property values we've experienced in the past year, unless you happen to be a renter. No doubt our city and county leaders are also happy to see the increases in their tax bases. There's certainly no wonder that market rate developers are celebrating their wisdom and their good fortune. Construction projects in Collier and City of Naples yielded thousands of new homes. I've been here almost 20 years. I've never seen more construction as I've seen in the last 2 years. It's no surprise in just the past year, our area's home and condo inventory for sale, in spite of all this new construction, has dropped by 76%, from over 5,000 units to under 1,200. At the same time, median sales prices rose nearly 40%. So I guess message is, let's face it, we're really fortunate to live in a place where people come to spend their vacations. I say that all the time when I drive down Fifth Avenue or 3rd Street, see all these visitors, and I say, I get to live here. And with the ability to work remotely, folks who can live anywhere they want have chosen to live here. Now, Collier County does have a history of building affordable housing going back nearly 50 years. There are currently 4,800 affordable units in 42 assisted housing developments. This started back in 1975, maybe even earlier, and most of them were built between 1990 and 2005, when it stopped. Between 2010 and 2015, developments with over 1,000 units saw the restrictions end as they left the affordable inventory. The risks going forward are more significant as more will be leaving the pool. Now, there is some good news. I'm happy to say that Michael and I recently attended groundbreaking at 3 new affordable housing projects. And Michael's going to discuss them in greater detail and explain how this can be a model and must be a model for the future. To be fair, every commissioner now understands and supports the need for workforce housing. Up till recently, there's been little consistency in their efforts. There's no question the costs are enormous and that very few developers are interested when luxury construction projects are booming. There are many ways a county can promote workforce housing by offering incentives to developers. Up to now, Collier County has been fairly limited. They've done density improvements, offered density improvements, zoning changes allow more units per acre, and they deferred impact fees. While both of these are important, other Florida counties have gone much further, providing far greater inducements. We must learn from them. Our county claims to fast-track affordable housing projects. Fact is, most Collier projects, which will begin construction in 2022 or 2023, began in 2019. It takes 3 to 4 years. Our problems are too acute to allow this much time to be taken from the time of an idea to implementation. So that's among our highest priority, to speed up the process. Now, I mentioned impact fees, and I'd like to spend just a minute on them. They're the very substantial monies that developers must pay in anticipation of the added burden new dwellings will create in roadways and schools and so forth. In our county, the amounts vary a bit depending on your fire district, but they're $20,000 per unit, $20,000 plus per unit for a single home and $10,000 plus for a rental or condo unit. and ours are among the highest impact fees in the state of Florida. Now, state law, and this is something that our state attorney recently, or our county attorney recently confirmed, state law does allow impact fees to be reduced or even waived for affordable housing. Collier County has said in the past that they would never waive these fees. Now, a few weeks ago at the Board of County Commissioners meeting, our committee urged them to reconsider this position, and at least they listened and requested an opinion from council. We asked for a bunch of other things. We encouraged them to budget $10 million a year funding for the purchase of land, to perform a study to consider implementing linkage, which is similar to impact fees, but for commercial and industrial businesses. We also asked them to, and we need them, to ease some of the rules and restrictions associated with multifamily housing. We can make this easier and simpler for developers. We asked our commissioners to help us identify surplus county-owned land and to collaborate with the school and fire district to see what might be available. This is so important. You drive through Collier County and see all the land. Some of the biggest landholders happen to be school district, fire districts, county. We need to free this up. The biggest stumbling block to building workforce housing is the cost and availability of land. As Michael is going to describe, we now have a land trust in place. That could be a game changer, and we've already seen it start to work. I mentioned density. It's among the most valuable tools the county has. And being able to decide how many dwelling units can be built on a property is critical to determining the economic viability of a project. So utilizing all these tools carefully and consistently is essential to our county's future success. Last month, our commissioners finally allocated the $20 million of sales surtax money that had been earmarked for workforce housing. This was a very positive step, but nowhere near enough. It's why we need to keep pressing our county leaders to approve the rest of our proposals. Standing here today, it's hard to be overly optimistic. Property values are rising far more quickly than employee wages, and so many more people want to move here. Inflation and building and financing costs are beginning to have serious impacts. Landlords are routinely raising rents disproportionately to what people can afford. Our essential workers are being forced to live further away, which does not bode well for the services we require. There's one thing we can all do. Call and write our commissioners. Tell them we're worried about the future. And perhaps someday we'll all realize how essential our essential workers really are. Thanks very much for listening.
Great comments once again by Joe. And I want to echo the gratitude to be invited to participate today, and thank Jen for the introduction. And just want to go a little bit deeper with background. The Housing Development Corporation of Southwest Florida sounds like it's a big housing developer, but actually we changed to the name HELP, which stands for Housing Education and Lending Programs, because it does more aptly speak about what we do as a HUD-approved. We're the only HUD-approved local housing counseling agency in Collier County. So we serve a broad market, but the basic mission is to provide financial strength and housing opportunities for the public through education and counseling, purchase counseling, credit counseling. We went through the downturn back in the early to mid 2000s. So there was a lot of foreclosure intervention counseling. So we call that mortgage default resolution counseling. So we do work very closely with the county on a number of endeavors. We've helped with distribution of the SHIP down payment assistance for individuals who want to become homeowners. We have also are currently working with some mortgage and rent and utility assistance, which I'll talk a little bit more about. This might come up in questions. It's there is funding available through the local fiscal recovery, and we're doing our absolute best to get that into hands, but it's more of a stopgap. So not necessarily a long-term solution, but we're doing our best to get that into the hands of individuals that are really in crisis at the moment, to try to keep a roof over their heads, keep them into the community. We also started an eviction diversion program, which is a very unique collaboration, in my opinion, within the county. We actually have one of the local judges that does the majority of the evictions as a part of a task force. We have legal aid services as a part of the task force, and then county housing staff. Our agency serves as housing navigator. There are other organizations like Salvation Army and United Way in partnership with the Hunger and Homeless Coalition who have some other funds. There's just a number of pools. Most of this is emergency. It's more reactive than proactive. So we're going to talk more about proactive stuff, but there is some reactive dollars available. This eviction diversion program, been fairly pleased for the last 2 weeks that we're just kind of linking together the resources, communicating with management companies, landlords, their attorneys, letting them know that if an application's in process, here's where that stands. We do have the access to both the court portal and the county assistance portal. And what we're really working to do is get a stipulation, an agreement that says, give us until this date to get these funds in, and then don't process his eviction. To date, none have gone through. So we've been able to stave, I believe, between 12 and 13 evictions, and hopefully, again, have that assistance that if the county is able to pay, can go up to 18 months. So I say it's stopgap, but it does have some amount of timeliness to it, and it can keep people housed until hopefully we have some improvement either in the number of units we have access to, or that individual's financial circumstances turning around to where they can afford where they're at. So those, again, are some of the reactive things. We can work all day long getting people mortgage ready, working on credit and budget and finance counseling. We can even get an application in for the county's SHIP down payment assistance. There is additional money available for that. They're looking to increase the amount per household availability, but it still doesn't solve the inventory issues that we have. So no matter how many people we have mortgage ready right now, if you're below 80% of area median income, if you're below 120% of area median income, locating a unit that is still affordable that you can qualify for, even with the assistance, even with a specialized loan program, still very complicated. And we're obviously dealing with cash deals and investors. And so those are the challenges we face. So back in 2019, there was a request for proposals that came out from the county to launch a community land trust. This was a recommendation of the Urban Land Institute, who was invited into the county by the commissioners, and they did a very detailed report back in 2017. And if you need a little light reading, it's 53 pages. I would encourage you to take a look. It is on the county website. Obviously things have, just gotten a lot crazier since 2017 in the housing market. But even at that point in time, they made a number of recommendations to the county and urged the government, but also employers and individuals that want to get involved, that this is something that you're going to be moving towards as a crisis. If you see an increase in your housing market, it's going to be extremely challenging for your workforce. And one of the recommendations, I believe there were 35 in total, and I will announce that the county staff has done a great job of pushing these initiatives forward to the commissioners to try to get approvals. And a number of these have been implemented. And the Community Land Trust was one initiative. The entire goal and mission of a land trust is to lock up land in perpetuity. So you can acquire land and hold it for future affordable housing development. You can acquire existing units and remove the cost of the land from the equation for whether that be a developer of multifamily housing. That land cost is removed for them, so it becomes more affordable for them to price units accordingly. But also for individual homeowners, with the land cost out of the equation, it's a much more affordable purchase. Now, it's not fee simple. It's a shared equity model, but it still has equity. It's better than rent. And if we get to the model that we're working towards, reducing that cost, you have a less expensive monthly payment than rent, the stability of being in a 30-year mortgage, and it is affordable because of the land value coming out. And it retains its affordability, that we're always going to be recycling and putting another workforce income restricted household into that unit if somebody's capable of selling and moving into fee simple, or if they need to leave the area. So that land trust model, I don't want to go in too much detail, but it's an exciting opportunity. We were blessed to receive a very minimal amount of seed funding, launched in January of 2020. And so it is fully operational. It is a private 501c3 nonprofit organization, has a separate board of directors, 7 wonderful, we actually just had somebody step off, so 6 current wonderful individuals who have dedicated their time since January of 2020, meeting monthly. We've had monthly meetings. We've got all the foundation in place with bylaws, with articles of incorporation. And we were even blessed to fall into the opportunity to work as a general partner in a housing development. Joe referenced the groundbreaking March 10th. There's a developer of affordable multifamily rental units that saw an opportunity in Collier County to do tax credit deal, which brings in, there's a multitude of financing that goes into creating affordable rentals, truly income restricted rental units. And they were doing 3 actual developments. They broke ground on all 3. The one that we're involved with is for seniors 62 plus, and it'll be in 2 phases, 160 units per phase. So delivering a total of 320 rental units, all of which are capped. You cannot earn more than 60% of area median income in order to qualify to live. So it's not the be all end all for the community, but it does bring a mix. It brings in some balance of having truly income restricted units. And the tax credit program is very complicated. Not a lot of developers work with it because it is not necessarily the most economically advantageous, probably, if you can do market rate units. But for those that get good at it, that have the niche, that have the resources, they do well. They still do well in the community. They get extra units typically through density, and they utilize the multitude of financing mechanisms to create these units. That same developer is also doing an 82 unit family development, same income restrictions. Actually, I believe that one can go up to 80% of area median income, but it's close to within town. And 82 units isn't going to solve all of the needs, but it is going to produce units that normally we don't have right now. We have not had any kind of subsidized multifamily development in Naples since 2005 until these hit. If we look at the statistics that Joe pointed out, Schimberg Center in Florida puts these. You can read the charts. You can see when your income restrictions are going to expire because you can see what date they were put into place. So it was a 17-year gap, and that was probably too long to not have brought in any type of subsidized income restricted units within the community. So we're excited to be a part of that as a general partner through the land trust, and we're going to certainly continue to look for those types of opportunities. I see Lisa's in the audience with Habitat. We have a tremendous Habitat for Humanity in Collier, and it's the greatest in the country in terms of production. And we've had many opportunities to partner in the past, but we look forward to expanding into that home ownership piece as well, and look for the opportunities to partner with an organization like Habitat. We're going to continue to look for builders that will have models that make sense for home ownership. And again, separating land. And we're going to continue to look for opportunities to acquire developable land that we can actually get multifamily, single family. A lot of this relates to density. We do need to be able to put somewhat densely populated housing if we're going to have it become affordable. There's just no other way to make the math work. So those are just some of the things. Run through the rest of my notes here. The 2 developments, by the way, the senior developments are in the Hacienda Lakes Development District. So they're going to be called Allegro and Cadenza at Hacienda Lakes. The 82 unit family is called Harmony, and that's going to be on Radio Road between Davis and Rattlesnake Hammock, I believe, in that little corridor. And that was 5 acres of county owned land that they put out for proposal. But to Joe's point, AHAC got that, and they were looking at that one parcel of land for probably 5 years before they brought a developer in and got these units off the ground. So speeding up that process will be key, but it is still a testament to the fact the county put it out for proposals, have a developer, that developer secured funding, and those units are going to be built. And it's going to be a beautiful community. And those will be 82 occupied units that will bring hopefully people a lot closer to their work. We hear a lot about when we're adding more units that we're going to create more traffic. But to Joe's point, with people commuting for such long distances to get to work, there's something to be said for if we can create new units closer to workplaces, that might actually reduce some of the traffic burden, at least in certain areas. It might redistribute it, but I think there is a lot to be said for getting some units closer into our community where people are working. A couple of other things that Joe mentioned, the surtax, the $20 million. Collier, it's very unique to have a surtax working towards housing, to have something set aside for housing. There's only one other in the state of Florida, and it's Pinellas County. They call it Penny for Pinellas. They've been doing it since 1987. They've had tremendous success with it, something easily you can look up. We hope to be able to replicate it. They have continued to renew that 1% sales tax since 1987. And most recently, it was renewed for 10 years with 83% of voters saying, let's keep this going, because it makes sense. It brings in, it's not putting all of the burden for infrastructure on local taxpayers. It spreads it out to individuals who are spending money in the community. And we have a lot of tourism here. So if you think about it, it kind of does make some sense to maybe spread the burden for infrastructure. And affordable housing, workforce housing is an infrastructure item. We really need it. As to Joe's point, we need to have people working in our community to keep it the way that it is. So that $20 million will be allocated. We are working with the county manager's office to implement a request for proposals to bring in some development. Again, with the land being a part of the equation, what can we have built? So we're going to be soliciting opportunities to put that money to work, leverage it to its highest and best use, so that we can see some great development move forward. I was only going to talk for like 5 minutes, but that just never happens. But let's talk more about some of the things that, and I do want to open it up to questions because I would love to hear what people want to know about. But just know that there has been a fair amount of progress. I've been doing this since probably 2008, 2009 within the community, and the momentum right now behind the commissioners setting a special session for affordable housing. I don't think we've ever had that before. We hope that it gets scheduled very soon, but they want to have an actual session where they can vote, where they can take action, bringing things back that were brought up at the last commissioners meeting on February 22nd, and see what really makes sense. Joe mentioned the $10 million potentially going in every year to the local housing trust fund. That's not going to fix everything, but that does give us local contribution, government contribution dollars, which can go a long way to filling gaps that developers may have in terms of producing the units that we hope to be able to produce. But what can we do as individuals? Well, Joe mentioned the advocacy, just staying tuned in. Anybody that wants to get information, the chamber has taken up a very keen interest in this, and they're putting out one of their individuals is on our board, Jenna, and she's their governmental relations director, and she puts out a fairly frequent email with lots of housing updates. And so you can click in the links and you find very good reading on that. So anybody that wants to be tuned into that, I'm sure she would be happy to add you to the email list. And so let's try to get your information, and you can read what's coming up. What do we need to be involved with? Are there commissioner meetings? Are there topics that are going to relate to housing? Coming forward and being a voice, but at least researching it. Not saying everybody has to be for every potential development that takes place, but at least getting the information to know why or why it does not make sense, and then lending a voice at the commissioner meetings, because it's important. It's important that we advocate. One of the other things that has been talked about, I was speaking to a nonprofit developer, and again, when we talk about gap financing, gap funding, I don't think county government can close all of that. So there's some talk of, should we have a social impact fund? Is something like that viable? Would be a revolving fund that individuals can participate in, corporate entities can participate in, and it produces, again, some dollars that might be able to bridge a gap for a development to be able to make it come through. It's short term, within 5 years. Once that development is out of the ground and is either renting or you have some units sold, you replenish the fund goes into another direction, another development. So the state does this at smaller levels. They have a sale program, which is a state apartment incentive loan. It lends at either 0% or 1% to developers to help try to close the gaps, but it's a small amount. And it takes a long time, to Joe's point. Those funding mechanisms, you're going to spend years trying to get all the approvals in place. If we want something that moves a little quicker, if we can do something similar at the local level, it might make a major impact. So that's kind of where I wanted to leave things off. I think I hit all my key topics. Went completely off script for the most part, but so I'll just open it up to any questions that you have. Yes. Well, I think right now, I think the standard density in Collier County has typically been 4 units per acre, but they've improved to now the standard, if you add housing affordability, and there are other ways in which you can achieve the maximum, which is 16 dwelling units per acre. There's another proposal coming out now that for developments that have housing, income restricted housing in it, they can get up to 25 units per acre in activity centers. So if it's in the right location, the hope is to try to make things a little more walkable, close to work. Yeah, absolutely. You're talking, and and there's height variances, and every particular parcel is going to have certain things that have to be looked at as far as zoning and what type of density is allowed. But they're trying to simplify that process so that and that's the whole thing, this whole idea of certainty in the process. We've talked to a number of developers and said, what would it take to get into the community, to be interested to at least come in and provide some proposals. to develop. And they said, just more certainty. We don't want to spend a lot of money putting a proposal together only to find out that we're not going to get approvals a year down the road. So they want to have it so that if you provide this on this particular site, you're more or less going to be within the guidelines and you will get approvals. Okay, sorry.
Decent return and provide the capital to fund the projects?
I don't know of anything local. And the question was, is there a nonprofit, a tax exempt real estate investment trust where the funds could be, invest in that trust and purchase land, but eventually get the dollars back? That's kind of what I was referencing through a social impact fund. It would really need to be created. And I think we need to think a little outside the box. The land trust is a tax exempt entity, so it can handle donations, but I also would like to see more of that revolving fund kind of concept to where you maybe can get a return, even if it's nominal. It's a lesser return than, but it's a very good question. Okay. Okay. Is that local here? Yeah. National, okay. Yeah, I'm always, any information that you have on that, I'd be very interested in learning about it.
Okay,
Just
let me,
if I can just pick up on.
yeah, I just want to jump in and suggest that people come to the mic if you can, because this is on Zoom and the people who are listening in won't understand the question at all unless you talk into the mic.
So I just want to make 2 points. One that's very recent, and we're seeing the major financial houses, the Blackstones, companies like them, that recognize the benefits of owning affordable housing. Our federal and state laws, primarily federal law sitting here in Florida, provide very significant benefits to for-profit corporations that own affordable housing, and they're raising the ante. So we've read recently about projects that have been bought in Fort Myers. We saw recently, a couple of months ago, when the Gordon River apartments were bought right here in the city of Naples. And we're going to have to keep our eye, but I think there's going to be more and more pressure. Going to your comment or your question on density, and just echoing Michael's comment, consistency is essential. If developers don't know what the deal is going to be, and each commissioner that they meet with has a different idea of what it should be, then the amount of time that's going to be wasted and the amount of reluctance for these folks to get into it is going to be significant. Also, we need consistency, because what we're seeing is some of the deals that have been made, the rent control sunsets. It'll only run 10 years. It'll run 15 years. And all that does is prolong the disaster. We see it now in projects that were built in 1990, 1995 that are sunsetting now. One of the things I like most about the land trust is the assurance that rental deals are going to be held in perpetuity. I think that's the most important thing here is when somebody rents an apartment, hopefully when their income grows to the point that they're able to afford something else, somebody new will come in. There's a genuine flow, new people aren't coming and staying forever. But if all of a sudden 15 years or whatever that number of years is stops and eviction notices get issued, rents get doubled, then we have a disaster, and we're seeing some of that today. More questions?
I have a question about the project that the Community Foundation and the Maureen's Foundation, and I heard it publicly said, so I guess I can say the Schultz Foundation are funding. It's been something when I was on the Community Foundation board, we talked about that. That was now 4 years ago. And it seems like it's forever, and it's still in progress, or I hope in progress. And I was talking to Eileen Connolly-Kiesler about it the other day, and she said, please work on the staff to get things moving faster. So do you agree?
Definitely. I mean, and that, again, it's another very unique project where you have a collaboration of local philanthropy combined with county resources that they had the land, and did a request for proposals. There were some limitations on the proposals on what would be allowed because of the philanthropy, who could build. And I'm not saying that necessarily affected anything, but it did. Right now, they're still trying to really figure some things out in the agreement. As far as I know, I don't have all the details on it. We're not personally involved with that project, but everything that I've heard, it is still in the works. But it has taken a little bit of time to figure out exactly the agreement with the developer, how the funding mechanism is going to work. Because some of that it's an interesting mix. I believe they're doing the 100 units of veterans and seniors that are going to be truly income restricted, and then 250 units of workforce housing. So the intent was to not necessarily have those be restricted on income, but capping the rents to a degree. And that's kind of unique. To look at it that way, like we're not going to income restrict, but we do want the rents. So it takes a little more creativity in terms of putting that funding together, I would have to assume, because some of the financing mechanisms are not going to allow you to go unlimited income.
I'm fairly new at this affordable housing business, so maybe I'm less patient or more frustrated, but than folks that have been working at this for years and realize how hard it is. I came from business. I appreciate if you need things done, you get them done. There's a way to prioritize. Things don't have to sit on desks for 3 or 4 years. The Golden Gate project is one of the strangest projects I've ever seen, and talk about something that's been pulled in so many different directions. The folks that lived there wanted to retain the golf course. So their priority was, and their commissioner was, we want a golf course there. It's going to be a 12-hole golf course. I'm not much of a golfer, but I don't know what a 12-hole golf course is, but I guess there are 12-hole golf courses in places. I don't understand 172 acres and there's going to be 400 units there. It seemed to me there should be closer to 4,000 units. But again, I've been here too recently, and so much of the die for this project has been cast. One thing I will say is one of the visions that I had, and Mike alluded to it a little bit. We live in one of the most generous and one of the most wealthy communities in the United States. You look at our parks, you look at our hospital, you look at our theaters, you look at our opera center, you look at the new Gulf Shore Playhouse, you look at all the names of wonderful people on these buildings. And one of the things that I thought might be easy was to get some of the wealth in our community behind the idea that we need affordable housing. And some of the names that are on hospitals, let's get them on the names of some affordable housing projects. At least that was my dream. But I've since met with Community Foundation, and I've met with the folks at the Scholes Foundation, and I've not yet met with the Moorings Park Foundation, but I will. And the sense of frustration I have on their part for having put millions of dollars into this project and have it sit there for years has caused me to refocus how quickly we're going to get a lot of donor dollars in to support some of these projects. I think we have to show some better results. I think it's still going to happen, but donors aren't willing to put in millions of dollars and then sit back and see nothing happen for years and years. And hopefully we can learn from this, and there'll be a different story coming forward. I do believe, final comment, when I'm told the ground will be breaking this year, 2022. It did appear before the Planning Commission a month or so ago. I still, as I said before, I don't understand a lot of it, but I do believe something is going to happen there. And I think it'll be wonderful. Not as much as I would have hoped for, but I think it'll be wonderful.
Thank you. I think we all are pretty familiar with the fact that affordable housing in this community, in this county is in a crisis standpoint, not only for farm workers in Immokalee and low-income people, but also for the workers who serve us here. And as I look at the incentives or the levers that you can pull, I mean, there is no incentive. I mean, you've gone into in some detail. There's no incentive for developers to do anything on this. Even if they want to, they don't know how, or they're not sure how to get it done in an efficient manner. There are many, many generous people in this community, and you've alluded to this just now. And this very church is extremely generous. I don't have my numbers exactly right. Maybe Jen or Lisa could help me, but we raised several $100,000 a couple of years. How much? All right, I knew Jen would correct me. $450,000 to build how many houses? 8. Thank you. My fact checking here. 8 houses in Immokalee in the Habitat program. I've also recently met with a board member from the Immokalee Fair Housing Alliance, which is also private money, who's going to be building rental units. You guys know all about this, right? So here's my question, and I want you guys to answer it. I don't want you to duck it. I don't think you will. We have this county commissioner form of government here, and I would like you to rate the 5 county commissioners on a 1 to 10 scale. No. What's wrong? I would like you to rate the county commissioners on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most progressive and active in this issue, and 0 being they don't care. Because I want to know. I mean, I want to know if my guy is doing it. Who is Jane? Who is our guy? Andy Solis. So, you know, I just think it's a question that we all need to understand. Who is doing what and who is dragging their feet in this county?
So let me answer, and I'm not ducking it, but as Jen said, I spent 11 years on the board of St. Matthew's House. A year ago, just about this time, I saw a notice that something called the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee was going to appoint members. And I knew I was term limiting out at St. Matt's, so I put my name on the list. And 15 people applied because the name really is rather exciting. It suggests that you really can do something.
Yeah.
And of the 15 that applied, I was the one that was appointed. I then proceeded to spend the next several months attending meetings. Nobody talked about affordable housing. Nobody accomplished anything. And then I learned that the operative word of that committee is advisory. It had no authority to do anything, and nobody really listened to what they had to say anyway. So we got into the fall, and I started, there's a long way around, but I'm going to answer your question as best I can. I got into the fall, and I started saying, you know, I don't need to be here. I'm old, I'm retired. I'm not much of a golfer, I'm not much of a fisherman, but I can have a whole lot more fun sitting here doing nothing. And I said more and more of that. And then shockingly, at the January meeting, I was sitting reading my agenda, and the first item was elect a new chairman. And my name was put in nomination. I said, hold it, I barely know how to spell AHAC. You want me as chairman? And they said, well, it's time to try something different. And notably, I guess I have a big mouth. So on February 22nd, AHAC made its first appearance before the commissioners in, I don't know how many. Okay. And I went through and asked them for the same things that I asked for here. And I previously mentioned I had spoken to the school district, I had spoken to the chamber, I had spoken to a hospital. We had 30 people come down, and Susan was there and she spoke, and representatives of the chamber were there and spoke. I mean, it was beautiful. Nurses got up and talked about how they live in their van. One came in her scrubs because she lives on the floor. People like Elizabeth spoke, and 5 out of 5 commissioners all said, we have to do something about this. So right now, we're sitting here 5 weeks later, and I'm going to selectively rate them all 10s because they stood up and they listened and they said, we have to do something differently. Now, if that workshop doesn't happen, if they don't follow the recommendation I made today to follow Miami-Dade and put some relief into people who are being forced out of rental apartments with no notice, well, then my ranking system is going to drop rapidly. But for the moment, I'm going to give all 5 of them the benefit of the doubt and say, I trust that they're going to do the right thing and we're going to get something done here.
Well, I will take I think it's a fair rating system at the moment, right? And the question is, step up and get something done. So thank you for answering that question. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Mike.
Okay.
It'll be harder the next time you ask.
I hope not.
Michael,
Well,
Michael, do you want to do the rating?
No, you did a great job. You did good. You did wonderfully. I've mentioned in my earlier comments that the momentum is here now. It's not, I mean, if we're being realistic, it hasn't always been politically savory to discuss affordable housing. Let's be honest. I mean, that's why I mentioned the voices. The commissioners are going to react to what the community wants. That's how they get elected. So I think right now there's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of individuals that are stepping forward and speaking about it. So the hope is that they will act upon the will of the community.
That's great.
So
And I want
good
to
answer.
And I want to thank both of you for everything that you're doing. It's an important issue and it's a tough fight, and you just have to keep pushing on it, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Elizabeth. Joe and Michael both know me. I am one of the leaders for the Rise Up Against the Housing Crisis in Collier County, our Facebook page, and Collier County's first tenant advocacy tenant union, basically. And one of the things that we're seeing is when we talk about affordable housing, what people see and think affordable housing is. So it's kind of like not in my backyard. Yes, we need it, but we don't want it in my backyard necessarily. We don't want that in our backyards. So my question to you both is, how can we get our residents, our constituents here in Collier County to open up more and talk about the need for affordable housing, changing possibly that name so it no longer has that low-income Section 8 stigma on it, and open that up to more of a dialogue to allow the residents to see that I'm an affordable housing person. I need affordable housing, and I make over $50,000 a year. There are many of us, the school teachers, the police officers, we all need affordable housing or viable living. But how would you guys tell us to go talk about that in the community?
I'm going to let Michael answer, but I'm going to first just deviate slightly from your question and give you an example of what troubles me the most. I mentioned my background with St. Matthew's House. In the last 2.5 years, we've geared up a feeding program. We're feeding 18, 19, 20,000 families a month. That hasn't debated. We're still doing that. So is Harry Chapin. So are all of the other pantries and feeding ministries. And I've had countless people say to me, it's time to stop the welfare. It's time for people to get jobs. And my response is simple. I would go to these food lines. I wasn't much of a volunteer in terms of putting boxes and stuff. So I would walk up and talk to the people themselves. I would see moms with 3 or 4 kids in their car who can't afford daycare, whose husbands are working 2 jobs, each of them at $10 or $12 an hour or something. They pay 70% of their pay in rent. They pay for gas, and there's no money left for food. And that's why they're on food lines. And the lack of understanding fairly broadly in our community of why do we still give away free food? It's because the people are spending all the money they make on living expenses and on gasoline, medical expenses. They don't have money left for food. And that's going to continue to go on. So this is a plug for Harry Chapin and for St. Matt's and for all the other people. Do your best to help these food pantries, because that need hasn't slowed down. Now, I'm going to let Michael answer the question of, to me, it's semantics. I grew up in affordable housing. I grew up in Brooklyn. I lived in a Quonset hut when my father came out of World War II. We lived in a new housing project. I thought it was the greatest place to live in the world. Affordable housing to me has never been a dirty word. But you're right. There are a lot of people say not in my backyard, and I don't know the cure for that. I spent 11 years at St. Matt's, didn't see the cure there, but I'm waiting for Michael to give me the answer.
I don't know that I don't want to say that there's a cure, but it comes back to the fact that there's such an urgent need right now. I think more people are recognizing it, and it's just inviting. We do need to see some of the developments that are including more mixed income, more housing affordability units. And the commissioners are starting to take that seriously. They've set a precedent. We don't have a mandatory inclusionary zoning policy. I don't think it'll ever get passed. The state has come back with, they're creating solid training on how, as a county government, to have a voluntary zoning ordinance that every time a development is built, the incentives are so strong to include some mixed income units, some restricted income units, that it entices a developer, says, we want to do this. But from the community's perspective, say, well, we wouldn't want that here. It's just about having the materials together, having some other projects in development. I want to see we use the word project, but developments that are going up, that are successful, that were, these new developments, I think, are going to go a long way. Some of the new apartment complexes that are being built that include some units that are capped as affordable. I live in a community that part of the issue is lack of understanding, because I live in Barrington Cove, and the Allura apartments are going up right literally in the backyard of a lot of our neighbors. And so there's a huge fight saying that apartments aren't compatible. We hear that word a lot, that rental is not compatible near single family home communities. And so we just have to try to see that. Everybody said their values are going to go down. I have not seen anybody sell their house for any less in Barrington Cove because of the apartments are there. Now traffic could get crazy. There are schools, and we do get all of that, but we have to see successful models that I think we can point to and say that we can integrate balanced development and balanced housing into the community. And that's, I think, what everybody's looking for. And you don't want concentrations of poverty. So you can't say it all needs to be in this particular area, because then that isn't really balancing out the community, and it isn't giving fair housing. And I'll tell you what, there's federal laws that say you as a community have to demonstrate how are you affirmatively furthering fair housing, and that is access to individuals across the income spectrum at all different demographic levels to have housing opportunities throughout the community. And there is an impetus on the commission to do that. And I do believe they're listening now, but you're right, the community has to be behind it as well. So the more of these types of events we can have, more people come out and say, we are in support of this, and talking to each other, talk to your neighbors and find out what the fear is. If it's truly values, if it's crime, what is it that leads individuals to believe that isn't compatible with where I live? Because I can say now that with it's a very nice apartment complex that's going up behind us, and I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I heard it has a bowling alley.
I heard that too, and I'm wondering if maybe we're going to be able to get in. I don't know, but anyway, yeah, definitely more on the luxury side. But the point being that you hear that across the board about multifamily rental isn't necessarily compatible in certain. We went through it. We had a neighborhood information meeting regarding our rental developments at Hacienda Lakes. It is zoned for senior housing. And it was never a secret, but the problem is that a lot of the single family homeowners that buy around it, they're not being told that is potentially going to happen. Just like the people that bought in our community all thought that was preserved land behind. Somebody told them that, a salesperson told them that. So you can understand why they would get frustrated when all of a sudden all the trees are being knocked down and apartment complexes going up. So it's not always an easy battle, but just having some of these success stories to point to, I think, is going to go a long way to say that, we have been able to successfully integrate. Quality of life hasn't necessarily dropped. Property values haven't necessarily dropped. So that's about the best answer that I can give.
Yeah, and I think also just reminding them that your your workforce housing is your affordable housing
Yeah.
right now as well, and most people, the average person living right next to you might end up not being able to afford that apartment tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they are just as equally deserving of living in an affordable place that they can call home, just like everybody else is.
We agree.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank
Elizabeth.
you.
Thanks for your passion.
I realize that the housing problem is a large scale, and what I'm talking about is pretty small scale, and I don't expect this to be the solution, but I'm just wondering if you see a trend. I was up in Sarasota a couple of weeks ago, and on 2 different days, I saw articles in their newspaper about, one was an arts organization which had built a building with theaters on the first floor and then housing above for their workers. And another was about a restaurant owner who was building a dormitory-like structure so that everybody would have their own bedroom and bathroom, but a common kitchen and living room on each floor, so that he could retain his employees. And I just wonder if that's going on with entrepreneurs in this area, and if it is a trend in the country.
The folks that were, I had an opportunity at the groundbreaking to talk to the folks from McDowell Company that are building the 3 projects. And they sent me brochures with some of the most beautiful 800 square foot units and geometric units. And I've been reading the same stories you have, even about small units that fit on a site. It's one of the things that we need to address with the rules that the county allows. Right now, their rules, even for number of parking spaces in multifamily units, are antiquated. We need to change that. We need to get past that. But I don't think there's any shortage of creativity. We've got some barriers that that we need to break through. The other thing that I think is interesting is some of the things that you just described. We're now seeing downtown Naples as luxury apartments, where they're putting the stores and the restaurants on the first floor and $3 and $4 million apartments above them. So I think affordable housing will follow. You're exactly right. There's no one image that's the right answer. And once the dam breaks and we start getting support for all of these things, I think we'll be able to move forward. The biggest issue right now is land, and land is so expensive and requires zoning changes. And the county does things in a certain way, and we're just going to have to keep working our way through this. But
it occurs to me,
your question is right on.
it occurs to me that Arthrex has a lot of money, and that if they really wanted to find workers here, they could provide housing for them.
So, I mean, to that point, it's no secret. Michael and I met with the NCH last week. We're encouraging as many people as we can to do self-help projects. So if you have an urgent, desperate need for nurses, on the one hand, you can wait 4 years or 3 years or whatever it's going to take for the county. On the other hand, maybe you should do something yourself. And the school district needs to do it. Arthrex needs to do it. A lot of other companies need to do this. If my business was here and I couldn't figure out where I'm going to hire people and where they're going to live, I'm not sure I'd rely on government to solve my problems.
And to that point, just real quickly, that is something that through the land trust we have been focusing on to look at redevelopment as well, redeveloping commercial areas. And the county has put that process into place to go from commercial space, which is considered to be a little more intensive, to residential is a simpler process. But we haven't seen a lot of either the conversion or the addition of residential units in a commercial site. But I do think it's something that will happen, certainly, because that if you have especially lands that aren't being utilized to the best of their ability, or a site that's not being utilized to its highest capacity, then that may be a little bit simpler fix than finding vacant land, changing all the zoning, getting all the infrastructure in place. So definitely employers that are interested in doing it, but they also are not knowledgeable on how to become property developers. So we have to put a process together. That's kind of what I'm focusing on, creating a think tank, having, we're just getting as many people that have some background, some experience in this, that want to be a part of that innovation and that thinking and that research, because it takes research, finding those areas where this is successful and how can we implement something that's being done in this particular community. I'm big into doing that. I like reinventing the wheel. So absolutely excited to see if that can become a trend in Naples. Yes, sir.
Great majority of housing. Living. But if you take a look at the new Patrick University housing, second most recruited. Are these high-rise facilities, 800 to 1,000 feet, two private shared area, and ideal for singles with retail and restaurant. And some of them even have. I think we got to think outside the box instead of the old traditional 10, 12-story tenement type.
We agree.
I have a question, and I'm really guilty of this, I have to admit. How do you, I guess the basic word that keeps coming through my mind is raising awareness. I've lived in Naples for a while, and I had no idea that this was such a problem. And I even manage a small store down on 3rd Street, and I can't find any help. And so it's something that people are talking about all the time, that are, managers or owners of stores or whatever, but the community at large and the snowbirds and that, I mean, it's a huge issue to try and get a lot of people interested in. And, Naples has so much money. I mean, the museum's great, the artists, it's all great. But to get people socially minded is really a huge task. And I just wonder if there's any way to promote awareness. I mean, marketing is, maybe that's an old word, I don't know, but anyway, it's a question for you.
So a couple answers. First, that's why we're here tonight, is to try to tell this group and whoever's watching, and hopefully you'll tell others. And because as a society, we all rely upon each other to spread the word and hopefully do the right thing. One of the things that's been troubling is we have a newspaper now that doesn't really cover local events. So you're more likely to see a car wreck in Michigan than the TV news does a better job, but only when we make news. So like when we're before the commissioners meeting, we create a stir, and we might be on the news that night, and then we're off again. So we feel what you say. We understand that the only way that this is going to happen is if people in the public care enough. We just had 38% of the population vote in the city of Naples election, which was something of a record. People come here and they have great lives and they do fun things. And the number of people that are really coming out and spending the afternoon here listening to us, as opposed to sitting in their lanai with a cocktail, There are probably far more of them than there are of we. So we're just going to keep working at it. People like Jen are going to invite us to go talk, and we're going to try to stir the pot and make people aware of the fact that we have serious problems.
I will say there is one resource. The county has hired a marketing firm to promote the needs of the community. It's colliercountyhousing.com. So if you can go to that site, I haven't been there recently, but they've promoted some videos. They put out some a lot of materials as to why it's necessary and given some statistics. And so it's a good site to utilize, and they really have tried to focus in on getting more information out. And I also referenced the chamber has gotten so heavily involved now that if you ever wanted to be part of that, that email that comes out with consistent housing updates. I think that's a great way to get information. But any input you have on the housing, the county side, I think that's important that they know that, you know, hey, you're hitting the right spots. This is giving us the valuable information that we need. Otherwise, they can maybe get back to their marketing consultant and change some things up. But they are at least making an investment to get to spread the information into the community. Jackie.
Hello. Break this down a little bit. So Jackie K, School Board Candidate District 5, and yes, I am for Students First. So my question relates to the district. I've already went to the school board meeting and I told them or strongly suggested that they look into providing workforce housing, because cities like Miami, as well in places like Chicago and California, or New York and California, they're also able to build through school bonds, you know, workforce housing for their teachers. So my question is, at some point, hypothetically, if they do decide to step up and do the right thing by their teachers, how or what resources would you all be able to provide, or the county would be able to provide to help them to build? Because they're not developers. They don't know what to do or how to do it. Where do they go for the resources?
Well, actually, I've had some conversation with a couple of the sitting board members about that and to get some help. If they have the land and they want to make that available, or if they're going to look for other sites, but they have some resources to put forward. And we're making the same push to any employer, to any corporate entity that wants to invest and figure out how to do housing. We're trying to create that consistent process. So having a regular portfolio, an index, I guess, of affordable housing developers that can come in. And I've met with probably 6 multifamily developers that have very different creative types of models. So, you know, absolutely, it's the resources are there now. Whether it really depends on who or what they're going to build for. I mean, they have so many different definitions of housing that you could potentially have some state, federal resources to help with that, but there you're going to run into your income restrictions, and you're going to have to play within the lines, and you may take more time. So if we're just looking to do something local with their investment with the land, you have some more flexibility, but you're going to have more of an investment to make a developer want to come in and build those units. And you're going to have things like density bonus, so you can build more units. You're going to maybe have to change some regulations on the size of the dwelling unit. Especially, I look at things, when somebody brought this up, if you want to do dormitory style housing for traveling nurses. Well, right now, I don't know if we could do that, because the size of the unit and the amenities and things are somewhat restricted. So it will take involvement from a number of different groups to figure out a complete plan, but we are trying to work towards that to again create some certainty, so everybody knows if we want to do this, here's how.
So very simply, I don't think the problem is how to.
Okay.
I think the how to will fall into place. I think the problem is the want to. And if they don't want to, then we're never going to get to the how to. And for many, many years, the school district here has taken the position that we had the foresight to buy land to build schools, and we're not going to solve the county's problem because they didn't do the same thing. And until the school district changes that attitude, then all the wonderful things that Michael said, never going to get up to bat.
Okay.
You gotta want to do it first. And, you know, and if you get elected to the school board, then.
Excuse me, when, not if, when.
Thanks, Jackie.
When.
I think there are some things that the school board is going to be able to do, which
Okay.
may not be what the school district up to now has demonstrated a desire to do.
So I would think then the voters like ourselves would be able to show up at school board meetings and insist that we are a community and they have a certain responsibility, not only to their teachers, but their students, but also
I don't understand why they haven't been doing it every month. So
show up at the school board meetings, please, the second Tuesday of every month, 4:30. Thank you.
thanks, Jackie. Thank you all. Jack, Jen.
Ask the Zoom questions. We don't want to ignore our Zoom audience.
Oh, well, no, the home audience hasn't been putting their questions in chat, so they'll just have to have a second go at you guys.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate, this is an overview, and I have to tell you that, and my friend Kevin did allude to this too. This church has had an appetite to try to help with housing because of our long involvement, 50 years, I think, involvement with Habitat. And so therefore, we think the church can get behind advocating, speaking out, broadening the message. And we're going to keep asking you the questions because we're brand new at this.
Jen, somebody mentioned before the Immokalee Fair Housing Alliance.
Yeah.
So if you haven't heard of it, so here's a group of GNLers that are now took it upon themselves. They're not taking any government money, just taking private money. They're building 128 units as they can afford to build them for people that now live in decrepit trailers in Immokalee. And supposedly the deal they've made is each time a trailer is vacated, the county is going to condemn it. I'll believe that when I see it, but that's what they've been told. If that group could do it, you could do it. They picked migrant farm workers. You could pick teachers. You could pick nurses. It doesn't have to be 100 units. It could be 6 units. It could be 10 units. And here's the guy that can tell you exactly how to organize it. Buy some land, put it in the land trust, figure out what you want to do. I'll be happy to do anything I can to try to help make it happen. It doesn't have to be 1,000 units. It could be 5 or 6 or 10. And that's an important way we can all get involved.
Start stacking success.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. I think that's fascinating and that's a real challenge. I appreciate that. I do know that some churches were part of the funding for that project. One question.
Florence, do you want to unmute?
Hello.
And you can go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so I am actually an educated professional, middle class, moved in from California about a year ago. And what's happened in the housing market here over the last year is shocking, really shocking. And so even coming in from California, when you're in an apartment, there's laws restricting these types of hikes. What are we doing? I'm not sure if these are the right to talk about the legal advocacy side of this and what we're able to do for laws.
I missed the first part of that, so I'm not.
I think that she's talking in California, they maybe had some stronger laws about rent restrictions, but we have found that in Florida, because this has been brought up often at the commissioners meeting, and there's just not any appetite in Florida to add a rent restriction. So you cannot increase rents. It's just definitely more of an open market. And so Joe saw something that would at least do some short term. You need more notice before you're gonna have a massive rent increase, more than 5%, the 60 days. And so those are probably the most that we can do in terms of legal battles. And because it has been brought up quite frequently at the commissioner meetings. And one of the commissioners even challenged, give us a legal opinion. I'd love to find out because it's been brought up so many times. We want to find out, can we do a local ordinance that puts any kind of cap on? And it came back from the county attorney's office that would not go anywhere just because of the state laws.
I'm hoping that we're seeing a tide changing. And one meeting does not make a tide. But keep in mind that for years, the folks that have had the ear of the commissioners are the ones that want property values to continue to increase. There's a reason why we stopped building affordable housing in 2005. thankfully, there are some new projects that just started 17 years later. If we want to change things, it's going to be we that's going to change it. And right now, commissioners know who their constituents are. They're the ones that show up in front of them. So please come down and talk to them. Thank you very much for listening to us. You did a great job.